Identify one major adversity that you dealt with and recovered from. What did you learn that has helped you to become a better person? Number 2, determine the worst possible thing that could happen in your business or career. What could you do now to minimize the negative effects if it did occur? Number 3, what are the 3 worst things that could happen in your personal and family life, and what could you do to prepare against them? Number 4, what are the 3 biggest mistakes that you have made, and what did you learn from each one? Number 5, what is the most effective way you could respond to your biggest problem today? Number 6, in what areas should you be prepared to take action and move forward rather than playing it safe? And number 7, what one action are you going to take immediately to face your fears and to move forward toward the achievement of one of your most important goals? Chapter 7, Self-Confidence in Action. James Allen said, "Above all, be of a single aim, have a legitimate and useful purpose, and devote yourself unreservedly to it." One of the most valuable experiences you can engage in accomplishing any goal you can set for yourself, is to ask yourself, what is my limiting step? What is the one factor that determines the speed at which I achieve my goal, or whether I achieve it at all? Your ability to identify your limiting step is one of the best demonstrations of your intelligence, and your capacity to eliminate this limiting step is one of the best demonstrations of your overall competence in achieving anything you want. Self-confidence is critical. In studying everything that has been written or said about personal success, the conclusion I came to was that your level of self-confidence is probably the critical factor in everything you accomplish. When you have enough self-confidence, you will try almost anything. Because success is largely a matter of averages or probabilities, the more things you try, the more likely it is that you will achieve greatly. For many years, Amoco Petroleum was famous amongst oil companies for having consistently developed and maintained higher levels of oil and gas reserves than any other major oil company. The president of Amoco was asked why his company was so successful in this area. He replied simply that, "We drill more holes." They didn't purport to be better or smarter than their competitors. They just focused on drilling more wells. And by the law of averages, they ended up drilling up more successful wells and becoming one of the most profitable oil companies in the world. Try more things. The same is true for you. When you set more goals, try more things, engage in more activities, and explore more opportunities, your probabilities of success increase dramatically. The only real limiting step that you might have is your level of self-confidence. When you reach the point where you believe in yourself absolutely, the barriers that exist in your external world will not stop you. The major obstacles to success always lie within the mind of the individual. They are not contained in external circumstances, situations, or people. As soon as you win the inner battle, the outer battle seems to take care of itself. The development of self-confidence has been the turning point in my own life. The reason I feel so strongly about the subject is because of what it has meant to me. The development of greater self-confidence has enabled me to go from rags to riches, from limited means and worries about money to national and international renown. I've been able to go from living in a small, rented, one-bedroom apartment and being deeply in debt to living in a beautiful home on a golf course and driving a new Mercedes. An inauspicious beginning. Talent and ambition have been very helpful, but without the development of self-confidence, my inborn abilities would have lain dormant and unused, as they did for many years. Before I gained enough self-confidence to commit completely to my goals, I was going nowhere with my life. I started with few advantages. I came from a home with 3 younger brothers, and while I was growing up, we never seemed to have any money. My father was a good man, but he was not always employed. I remember from my earliest days that we could never afford anything. My mother used to dress us by buying used clothes from the Goodwill and the St. Vincent de Paul rescue missions. We would wear pants and shirts that had been given away by other families. Sometimes the kids at school recognized that the clothes I was wearing were their old clothes that their parents had given away. Christmases and birthdays were not occasions of great celebration. We had little to give and little to share. Early behavior problems. I became a behavior problem at an early age. I see now that I was just rebelling against my upbringing, but at the time I was a real problem for everyone around me. I was constantly being kicked out of classes for misbehavior. I was suspended or expelled from 4 schools during my junior high and high school years. I had the sorry distinction of being the worst behaved kid in school with more detentions, demerits, and failed classes than any other kid in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. I learned later that my teachers had voted me the most likely to end up in prison. I began working at a young age. I worked at a part-time job and then full-time jobs to earn my own money, buy my own clothes, and eventually get my own car. I worked as a dishwasher in a small hotel for 8 to 10 hours a day during my 12th grade year, and although I didn't drop out of high school, I failed out. Failure from the beginning. I continued going to school until the year was over, but I failed 6 out of my last 7 courses. During the graduation ceremonies, they allowed me to go up on the stage in a gown in front of the audience and receive a certificate from the principal. The person in front of me received a diploma. The person in back of me also received a diploma, but what I got was a leaving certificate. A leaving certificate is just a polite way for the school to say, "Goodbye, please don't ever come back." Laboring jobs. While many of my friends who had graduated from high school went on to university to complete their educations, I began working at laboring jobs. Over the next few years, I worked as a dishwasher and a kitchen helper. I worked in sawmills and factories. I worked on construction crews and as a laborer. In one job, I dug wells. That's where you start from ground level and work down rather than up. I worked at washing cars and as a galley boy on a ship. I worked in gas stations and as a mechanic's helper. When I answered employment ads in the paper, I never even got a reply from anyone. My job applications were just thrown in the wastebasket. When I was 23 years old, I was an itinerant farm worker, sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn and getting up when it was pitch black to eat with the farmer's family before the workday started. Selling from door to door. In my mid-20s, I was still drifting, and in order to eat, I began selling office supplies from door to door. I did poorly. From there, I went to selling other things. I remember making calls for an entire month without making a single sale. I lived on loans and charity from family and friends. I had virtually no possessions, very few clothes even, no money, no high school diploma, no marketable skills, and no experience of any real value to anyone. I was going nowhere fast. Meanwhile, all around me, I saw people my own age and younger who were doing well. They were wearing nice clothes, driving nice cars, and working at well-paying jobs. They were moving onward and upward in their careers. They had offices, and some of them had staffs. Several of them had gotten married and had homes and families and cars and furniture and what appeared to be pretty good lives. The big question. From the age of 15, I had been wondering why it was that some people were more successful than others. While I wasn't making much progress on the outside, I continued to read and search for the answers to this question, and I began to experiment with some of the ideas I discovered. My first turning point came when I realized that my problems at school and in getting along with other people were as a direct result of my own personality. I realized that if I wanted things to change, I would have to change. I began to understand that my unhappiness and anger and frustration at my childhood experiences had caused me to develop a negative personality that turned many people off. And I accepted that any change that was going to take place had to begin with me and was up to me alone. No one was going to do it for me. No one would help me. No one else really cared. If I wanted to be successful and popular with others, I would have to go to work on myself and become a different person. The big turning point. The second turning point for me came when I was poor and 20 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment and working at a laboring job during the day. I realized that I was completely responsible for my life and for everything that happened to me from then on. If I wasn't happy with my income or my work or my education or my future prospects, it was up to me to go to work on myself and make the necessary changes. They wouldn't happen by themselves. The importance of goals. The third turning point came for me when I discovered the importance of setting goals and of making clear decisions about what I really wanted in each area of my life. When I first stumbled across the subject of goals, I thought they were something that they had in sports. The idea of setting them for myself wasn't quite believable. I had so many problems and excuses that I felt that goal setting was really just an exercise in futility. It might be a pleasant entertainment, but nothing would come of it, considering my situation. Because I had low self-esteem and limited self-confidence, the first goals I set were not very high. They were consistent with what we talked about in the second part of this program. But I looked upon the exercise as more of an entertainment than as an important stepping stone to success. I remember sitting in someone's cheap hotel room many years ago. I took out a piece of hotel stationery, wrote out a series of goals, put deadlines on them, and then made a simple plan for accomplishing them. I promptly lost the sheet of paper, but exactly 31 days later, just as I had written, and as a result of a remarkable series of coincidences, my goals were all achieved. I was in my 20s at the time, and I still remember the feeling of astonishment I had at that time. I felt that I had learned about a secret power that I could use to accomplish almost anything. 3 great ideas. I had learned 3 important ideas. First, accept complete responsibility for yourself and for everything that you are and ever will be. Second, accept that you can change your situation only by going to work on yourself and learning the things you need to know to be better. And third, set clear goals with timelines for the things you want and then work every day to bring those goals into reality. For the next few years, I used these ideas sporadically. Each time I did, I would experience a burst of success and progress. As soon as I achieved a modicum of success, I would abandon these ideas and go back to simply reacting and responding to whatever happened on a daily basis. It took me several years before I finally began practicing these ideas and many others that I mentioned in this program consistently. I then began to get results in a systematic and consistent way. We sabotage ourselves. I learned later that our natural tendency is to work hard until we find a method or technique that works for us, whether in life or work or relationships, and then, for some perverse reason, we promptly abandon the technique and go back to behaving in our old way, in a random and haphazard manner. A mental exercise program, like goal setting and positive thinking, is very much like a physical exercise program. If you expect it to really work for you, you have to practice it persistently every day and keep at it indefinitely. When I began to apply these proven success principles to my life and worked on them every day, I was able to bring about almost miraculous changes in every area of my life. And so can you. And here's the point. I learned, in retrospect, that the reason why I suffered so many frustrations and why I drifted away from using these principles so often was because I lacked self-confidence. My conscious mind told me that these principles made sense, but my subconscious mind, my storehouse of memories and emotions and previous experiences, was telling me that I wasn't good enough and that success was not really for me. As my friend Zig Ziglar says, I was engineered for success but programmed for failure. I wanted success on the outside, but I didn't believe I was capable of it on the inside. You can develop any quality. The fourth turning point for me, and the reason that I have recorded this program for you, was my discovery that I could develop any quality that I thought was necessary for my success and happiness. I learned that by hard work and repetition, I could overcome and override my feelings of inferiority and undeservingness and build up my feelings of self-esteem and self-confidence. I could identify and then alleviate my own bottlenecks or limiting steps. By working on myself every day, I could build myself up into the high-achieving, happy person that I really wanted to be. By taking my foot off my own subconscious brakes and putting them onto my conscious accelerator, I could begin to move ahead rapidly in life. And the key, the spark plug, was the conscious and purposeful development and maintenance of high levels of self-confidence and the self-esteem that goes with it. The secret of success. Every successful man or woman that I've ever talked to or read about has come to pretty much the same conclusion. By every measure, you have more talent and ability than you could use in 100 lifetimes. You too can step on the accelerator of your own potential and begin moving forward at a speed that will amaze you. Many people who have listened to my programs or gone through my seminars have come back to me and told me that they cannot believe how fast their life begins to improve when they begin to apply these principles on a daily basis. The 4 Ds of success and self-confidence. Here's the question. How do you infuse your whole life with the kind of self-confidence that makes everything possible for you? It is contained in what I call the 4 Ds, which determine success in anything you really want to accomplish. The first D is desire. You must really want to become a totally self-confident human being. You must build up your desire by thinking about it and talking about it and working on it all the time. Your desire must become so intense that it overrides your fears of failure and rejection and inferiority, and it becomes the dominant emotion governing your behaviors. Intense desire is the starting point of all personality modification and goal attainment. The second D is decision. You must make a do-or-die decision that you will go to work on yourself and keep at it until you achieve the kind of self-confidence that enables you to do and be and say whatever you want. You must burn your mental bridges. Many people want things, but they never make the clear, unequivocal decision that they are going to do whatever it takes to get them. The third D is determination. Once you have started to make significant changes in the way you act, your internal gyroscope will try to take over and bring you back into your comfort zone, into your old ways of acting. Sometimes progress will be slow, and often you will see no progress at all. Nonetheless, you must persist in the positive and constructive behaviors that you know will lead to making you into the kind of person you wish to become. Your determination must be as unshakable as the self-confidence that you desire. The fourth D is discipline. Underlying and surrounding all great achievement in life is the quality of self-discipline. This is the ability to make yourself do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. Every practice of self-discipline strengthens your discipline in every other area of your life. As Napoleon Hill said, after more than 20 years of research into the lives of successful men and women, self-discipline is the master key to riches. It is self-discipline that makes everything else possible. If you have the desire to change, the decisiveness to take action, the determination to persist on your forward track, and the discipline to make yourself do whatever you need to do, your self-confidence and your success are inevitable. Positive knowing versus positive thinking. We said earlier that self-confidence comes from positive knowing rather than from just positive thinking or hoping. It is only when you have a firm conviction or belief in your abilities, based on experience, that you really know that your self-confidence is not an act. This is why every act of self-confidence builds your self-confidence. Every success you experience builds your self-confidence and your ability to achieve further successes. Every mental exercise that you engage in to improve and strengthen your personality builds your self-confidence. And everything that you learn and practice from the lives of other self-confident people improves your own self-image, increases your self-esteem, and raises your own self-confidence. The Gallup Success Survey. Some years ago, in the mid-'80s, the Gallup organization conducted one of the most extensive surveys into the reasons for success ever conducted in America. They selected 1,500 men and women whose names and biographies had appeared in Marquis' Who's Who in America, the most prestigious register of noteworthy individuals in the country. They asked them at great length what they felt were the reasons why they had become so well known and respected in their lifetimes. This group included Nobel Prize winners, university presidents, heads of Fortune 500 corporations, leading academics, writers, inventors, entrepreneurs, and even a high school football coach, a man who continued to have a significant impact on the lives and personalities of the young people he had trained. 5 essential qualities. After many months of research and interviews, they were able to isolate the 5 most important qualities for success and self-confidence in America. And their findings turned out to be consistent with virtually all the other research that's been done in this area. Number 1, common sense. The first and most important success quality was defined as common sense. It is said that the average person has an enormous amount of common sense because he or she hasn't used any of it yet. Common sense seems to be something that a person accumulates as the result of experience over a long period of time. Common sense was defined by the participants in this survey as the ability to cut to the core of a matter, to recognize and deal with the essential elements of a problem or a situation, rather than getting sidetracked by similar issues or symptoms. Another definition of common sense given was the ability to learn from experience and then to apply those lessons to subsequent experiences. Common sense was seen as a core quality that enabled a person to become increasingly more effective over time. Perhaps another word for common sense is wisdom. Aristotle once defined wisdom as an equal combination of experience plus reflection. He suggested that you need to first have the experience, and second, to take an equal amount of time to think about what happened to you and what you could learn from it. You are far, far wiser than you know. In fact, based on your experience, you probably have the ability to be far more effective than you are just by applying what you've already learned. The problem for most people is that they simply do not take enough time for reflection. They do not take the time to sit and write and think and dialogue with others about their experiences. Socrates once said that we only learn something by dialoguing about it. You only really understand something to the degree to which you can discuss it with others or explain it to a third party. Your ability to translate your experience into words, which only comes through thinking and reflection, is essential for your growth and wisdom and common sense. Gain additional knowledge. I would add one more ingredient to Aristotle's definition of wisdom, and that would be knowledge. Wisdom is, therefore, a measure of knowledge plus experience plus reflection. First you learn, then you practice what you learn, then you take time to think about what happened. When you turn off the television or radio, or put down the newspaper and begin spending more time talking about and thinking about what has happened to you, you begin to grow at an exponential rate. 2 magic questions. Perhaps the 2 best questions I have learned for personal growth are these. After every experience, successful or unsuccessful, stop and do an instant replay of the experience, preferably on paper, and ask yourself first, what did I do right? And second, what would I do differently? If you take a piece of